Today you will take a test on direct variation and rate of change. So remember, in all the previous classes, I've mentioned that this part of the unit is 100% memorization. So if you don't memorize the rules and what to do, it's going to make life a lot more challenging. So before we talk about this warm-up, if we talk about rate of change first, because rate of change isn't on this warm-up. Rate of change is a fancy word for slope. So when you hear the word rate of change, your brain just says, oh, slope. And when you have a rate of change problem, you have to first make a table. So I would just make a simple, I see rate of change, and I'm just going to write up here for a nice quick review. I'm going to make a table. I'm going to label it X and Y, right? And remember, X is always time. So minutes, seconds, years, months, that's time. I'm going to plug that on the X side, and then I'm going to fill out the Y side. And then I would just do y1 minus y2 over x1 minus x2, and I would calculate the slope. Remember, you're going to lose points if you don't write your units. It's y over x, so feet per second, bottles per hour. Anything that we're talking about, that's always how it's written. So you're going to lose points if you don't include your units. So rate of change was the first thing we talked about. Then we talked about the word direct variation. Direct variation, I have 5 things that I have to remember with direct variation. First thing, when you see the words direct variation, what do you instantly think? Y equals kx. That's the equation for direct variation. Y equals kx. So if I look at example 1 and example 2, what do I have to do first before I can just say yes or no, it's a direct variation? Well, I have to get y by itself. So number 1, if I get y by itself, I'm just going to divide by 2. So I have y equals 2x. And on number 2, I'm going to add 12 to both sides. So I have 3y equals 6x plus 12. And then if I divide by 3, I have y equals 2x plus 4. So looking at example 1 and example 2, how do I know which one is a direct variation? Well, the one I know is a direct variation is when b equals 0. So if I look at number 1, what does b equal? Well, b equals 0 because there's nothing over here. So yes, this is a direct variation. If I look over at number 2, is number 2 a direct variation? No, because b equals 4. So I would say no, b does not equal 0. And then it says here, if yes, state the constant of variation. Constant of variation is just a fancy word for k, for slope. So k equals in this problem 2 over 1 or just 2, it doesn't matter. So these are the first 2 out of 5 things you need to memorize. You need to memorize the equation, and you need to remember that b must equal 0. If I'm looking at a graph, how do I know it's a direct variation? Well, I know it's a direct variation is when I'm looking at a coordinate plane when it passes through the origin. If it doesn't pass through the origin, then I know it's not a direct variation. So those are 3 out of the 5. So I got the equation, I got b equals 0, and on a graph it must pass through the origin. Fourth thing is looking at a table. When I'm looking at a table, how do I determine if it's a direct variation? Well, I first have to identify x and y. X always comes first if it doesn't tell you otherwise. And then I have to add an extra row k. So you remember how I find k? Well, how I find k is I just do y divided by x. So y divided by x, I get negative 2. Y divided by x, I get negative 2. Y divided by x, negative 2. Y divided by x, I get negative 2. If I do negative 4 divided by 1/2, hopefully you know to use your calculator. If you type in your calculator, you get negative 8. I know this is not a direct variation because not all my k's match. If all of my k's match, I would then say y equals negative 2x if it matched, but it doesn't, so I can't write that. Okay? So hopefully you're okay with that. Let's go ahead and keep going. If I look at number 4, it says assuming y varies directly with x. Stop. Whenever I see varies directly, I write y equals kx on my paper. It says write an equation where y is 15 and x is negative 20. So I'm going to write y is 15 and x is negative 20. And now I'm going to solve for k. So I'm going to divide by negative 20 on both sides. So I'm going to type this in my calculator. 15 divided by negative 20. You're going to tell me I get negative 3/4, or you can say k equals negative 0.75. I don't care if you give me a decimal or a fraction. Fractions, you know, I always prefer. However, decimals are okay. If you circle this as your answer, you're losing points because you have to write the equation, y equals kx, and I have to replace k with negative 0.75x, or negative 3/4x. Okay? And if I go ahead and I look at number 5, number 5 says, given m varies directly, so I instantly write this on my paper, with n. So I notice I have different letters. So because m comes first, it goes to y, and then I have n going to x. So I'm going to rewrite this and say m equals k times n. It says write an equation when m is 16 and n is negative 2. So m is 16, n is negative 2. I'm going to divide by negative 2, so I get k equals negative 8. If I circle this and I move on, I'm going to lose points because I have to write the equation. So I'd have to say y equals negative 8x. And if I write it like this, I'm going to lose half a point because I need to use the correct letters. M equals negative 8n.